I remember the first time I met Eleanor. She walked into my small studio with the kind of confidence that some people only dream of. Her heels clicked loudly on the wooden floor as she stepped in, scanning the room like she was on some kind of mission. I could already tell she was the type of woman who knew what she wanted and what she didn't. "I'm looking for someone to design my wedding gown," she said, voice dripping with superiority, as though she were doing me a favor. "But I won't settle for anything less than perfection." I smiled politely, though I could already feel the pressure rising in my chest. I had worked with countless brides, but there was something about Eleanor that made me nervous. Maybe it was the way she looked me up and down, or the sharpness in her eyes that suggested she didn't think I was capable of fulfilling her dream gown. She was in her late 20s, long blonde hair that looked as if it had just been styled by a professional, and her skin glowed with that perfect porcelain finish. She was the picture of a high society woman, and I could tell that she wasn't used to hearing the word no. Her tone made it clear that she had been expecting to be treated like royalty. "Can you handle this?" she asked, her eyes narrowing just a bit. "My wedding is the event of the year. It has to be perfect. No flaws. Do you understand?" I nodded. "Of course, Eleanor, I'll make sure it's everything you envision." But in truth, I had my doubts. Eleanor seemed like the type of person who would never truly appreciate the effort and love that went into handcrafting a dress. Most brides were kind, sweet even, but Eleanor, she was a different breed. Still, I couldn't afford to turn down this opportunity. Weddings like hers were rare, and they could be a stepping stone for my business if I played my cards right. I took a deep breath and began to sketch out some ideas for her gown, trying to push aside the nagging feeling that something would go wrong. Little did she know, her wedding gown would be designed by someone she least expected. Someone much closer to her world than she could ever imagine. Over the next few weeks, Eleanor came back to my studio several times, each visit more stressful than the last. Every time she walked in, her eyes seemed to inspect everything I did, the way I spoke, the way I moved. It felt like she was constantly measuring me, judging me. She would make comments about how the fabric isn't luxurious enough, or how the design lacks elegance. I smiled through it all, pretending like her words didn't sting, but deep down, it felt like I was being torn apart with every critique. One afternoon, I had just finished a mock-up of the gown, an intricate design I had poured my heart into. The bodice was delicate, adorned with lace, and the train flowed elegantly. I thought she would love it. When she saw it, though, her face contorted in distaste. "This isn't the style I was expecting," Eleanor said, tossing her perfectly styled hair back with a huff. "I thought you could do better." I tried to keep my voice steady. "Eleanor, I promise, the fabric and embellishments will make it come to life. Trust me, it's a process. This gown is meant to be timeless, not trendy." She raised an eyebrow. "I don't care about timeless. I want bold. I want a gown that will turn heads, make people talk. You need to do better." Every word felt like a slap in the face. But what could I do? She was paying a lot of money for this gown, and I had no choice but to try and make her happy. I knew she wouldn't settle for anything less than perfection, even if her version of perfection felt impossible. Still, something inside me felt wrong. I couldn't quite shake the feeling that she didn't even care about the artistry behind the dress, just that it made her look better than everyone else. Then one day, something unexpected happened. As I was working late in my studio, putting the final touches on the gown, I got a phone call. The voice on the other end was unfamiliar. "Hello, this is Anna. I'm reaching out because I need to discuss the wedding gown you're working on for Eleanor. There are a few changes I'd like to suggest." I froze. The name Anna didn't ring a bell. I had never heard of her before. "I'm sorry, but I don't know who you are," I replied, trying to sound polite. "This is the first time I'm hearing from you." Anna hesitated for a moment before she continued. "I understand, but I'm actually a friend of Eleanor's. She asked me to step in and help oversee the gown's design. I have a very specific vision, and I don't think you're quite getting it." A wave of panic rushed over me. How was this happening? Eleanor had never mentioned anyone else being involved in the process. Was she really going to micromanage the entire gown? I knew I couldn't back down now. I've been working very closely with Eleanor, and I'm confident that what I'm creating will be exactly what she wants. Perhaps we should arrange a meeting with her so she can weigh in. Anna's voice became colder. I think it would be best if you follow my instructions. I know what Eleanor wants better than you do. The call ended abruptly, leaving me in a swirl of confusion. Who was Anna, and why was she so involved in Eleanor's gown? What was going on behind the scenes that I didn't know about? The next day, I tried to put everything out of my mind and focus on finishing Eleanor's gown. But as I worked, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Why had Eleanor not mentioned Anna before? And why did Anna seem so insistent on controlling the design? My nerves were on edge. That afternoon, I arrived at the studio, ready to meet Eleanor for what I hoped would be a calm discussion about her gown. As I opened the door, my heart skipped a beat. Standing in the corner of my studio was none other than Anna. She was tall, with sharp features and a polished look that seemed to scream wealth. She didn't look like the kind of woman I'd expect to be involved in such a personal project. But there she was, staring at my work with an air of superiority. "Eleanor should be here in a minute," Anna said, barely acknowledging me. "I just thought I'd come early to see the gown myself." I nodded, trying to remain professional, but my insides were a mess. There was something about Anna that made my skin crawl. As if sensing my discomfort, she shot me a thin smile, one that didn't quite reach her eyes. "By the way," she added, looking at the gown, "Eleanor has made some changes to the vision. She wants a little more drama, something that will really make a statement. I'm sure you can manage that, right?" I didn't have time to respond. The door swung open, and Eleanor walked in, her usual air of authority following her. She took one glance at the gown and sighed. "It's nice, but it's not quite what I imagined. Anna has some great ideas, though. She really knows how to make things pop." I glanced from Eleanor to Anna, my stomach churning. I had been designing this gown for weeks, pouring my heart and soul into it, only to be told it wasn't enough. And now, I was being sidelined for someone else's input, someone who had no business being involved in the process. I tried to stay calm. "I've already made sure the gown is tailored to Eleanor's vision. If there are specific adjustments to be made, I'm happy to discuss them." Eleanor gave me a tight smile. "Well, Anna has some really great ideas. Don't worry, you'll still be in charge of the final product, but I think her input will be beneficial. Don't you?" My heart sank. How could Eleanor trust Anna more than me? I had been the one working on this gown day and night, but it was clear that Anna was slowly taking control of the project. I was just a placeholder, an afterthought. But the worst part, I knew I couldn't back out now. Eleanor was a client I couldn't afford to lose. This gown was supposed to be my big break, and I couldn't let Anna or Eleanor push me aside. But the deeper I dug into the situation, the more I felt like I was losing control of my own work. That night, as I lay in bed, my mind kept racing. I couldn't stop thinking about Anna. What was her connection to Eleanor? Why was she so invested in this gown? And most importantly, how much of Eleanor's wedding would really be my work, and how much would belong to someone else? The answers seemed just out of reach, and I knew that the twists in this story were far from over. It wasn't long after that meeting with Anna and Eleanor that everything began to unravel. As the weeks went by, I kept seeing less of Eleanor and more of Anna. She would show up at my studio unannounced, giving suggestions, often pushing me to change things I had already perfected. Every time I tried to explain the intricacies of my design, she brushed me off as though I were a mere assistant, rather than the designer of the dress. I was starting to feel invisible, like I wasn't even part of the creative process anymore. But one day, everything changed. I was at the fabric store, picking out some additional lace for the gown, when I overheard something that would change everything. Two women were chatting nearby. One of them was talking excitedly about a wedding, and I couldn't help but overhear their conversation. "Can you believe Eleanor doesn't know yet?" one woman said, laughing. "She's been raving about that dress and how it's going to be her dream gown. Little does she know, it's all Anna's work." The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. My hand froze mid-reach as I tried to process what I had just heard. It wasn't possible. There was no way Anna was behind the gown. The woman continued, Anna's been designing it all along. She's the one who's been telling the dressmaker what to do. Eleanor's so caught up in everything, she doesn't even realize. All she cares about is the look of the dress at the wedding. My blood ran cold. I had been fooled. The entire time, I thought I was designing this gown for Eleanor, but it was Anna pulling the strings. The designs I had thought were my own were being dictated by someone else who wasn't even supposed to be involved. That afternoon, I rushed back to the studio, my heart pounding. I knew I had to confront Anna, but I wasn't sure how. When I arrived, she was sitting there, already flipping through fabric swatches, as if nothing had changed. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "Anna," I said, my voice shaking slightly, "I know what's going on." She looked up at me, feigning innocence. "What do you mean?" I couldn't hold back any longer. "You've been designing the gown, haven't you? This whole time you've been giving me instructions, and I've been blindly following them, thinking I was doing this for Eleanor. But I've seen the truth now. It's all you." Anna's smile faltered for just a moment, but then she leaned back, crossing her arms. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said coldly. "I'm just here to help make sure things go smoothly. Eleanor asked me for my opinion, and I'm giving it. I know what works for her." I was furious. "You're not here to help. You've been taking over everything. Eleanor deserves to know the truth." Before Anna could respond, Eleanor walked into the room, her usual composure in place. She didn't seem surprised to see me confronting Anna, and that's when it hit me. Eleanor had known all along. "Eleanor, I don't understand. Why didn't you tell me about Anna being involved from the start?" I stammered. Eleanor's gaze was unwavering. "I didn't think it was necessary. Anna has always been a part of my wedding plans. She's been my closest friend for years, and I trust her. Why would I tell you about her input? You were doing the design work. That's all that mattered." A cold realization washed over me. Eleanor had been using me all along, and I had been too naive to see it. She never truly cared about the dress or my vision. It was just about the final result, about impressing everyone at the wedding. Anna gave me one last look, a smirk playing on her lips. "I think it's time for you to step aside, don't you? I'm sure you can find other work." I stood there, stunned. I had poured my heart into this gown, given everything I had to make Eleanor's dream come true, only to be completely disregarded. But in that moment, I knew something important. I couldn't let this betrayal define me. I might have been pushed aside in this project, but I still had my talent, my vision. And one day, someone would see it. Someone who would appreciate the work that went into every stitch, every detail. I walked out of the studio without saying another word. My mind was spinning, but I knew that this wasn't the end for me. It was just the beginning. As for Eleanor and Anna, I couldn't help but wonder how long their fake smiles would last before the truth came out. But that was no longer my problem. I had my own path to walk now, and I was ready to take the first step. In the weeks that followed, I focused on myself. I threw myself into my work, taking on smaller projects to keep the studio running. But the sting of what happened with Eleanor and Anna never truly faded. It wasn't just about the gown, it was about the betrayal, the way they had used me as if I were nothing more than a tool to achieve their vision. I spent sleepless nights thinking about what went wrong. It was hard to let go, but deep down, I knew I had to. I had to find a way to move forward. And then, something surprising happened. One evening, as I was closing up the studio, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and for a moment I hesitated. But when I opened the door, I was shocked to see someone I hadn't seen in weeks. It was Eleanor. "Hi," she said, her voice soft and uncertain. "Can we talk?" I had no idea what she wanted. After everything that had happened, I didn't know if I could trust her. But curiosity got the better of me, and I stepped aside to let her in. She looked different. Flustered, almost vulnerable. I hadn't seen this side of her before. She sat down across from me, wringing her hands nervously. "I know I hurt you," she started, her voice shaky. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I never wanted to treat you like that." I crossed my arms, trying to keep my composure. "Then why did you let Anna take over? Why did you act like I didn't matter?" Eleanor looked down, her face full of regret. "I was so caught up in the wedding, the pressure to make everything perfect. I thought that by letting Anna handle the design side of things, everything would go smoothly. But I realize now that I was wrong. You were the one who understood my vision, not her. I should have trusted you, felt a mix of emotions, anger, disbelief, and strangely, a bit of sympathy. It doesn't change anything. You let me believe that I was the one making the decisions, when all along, Anna was pulling the strings. She nodded, her eyes filled with guilt. I was afraid to disappoint her. She's been my friend for so long, and I didn't want to hurt her feelings. But I hurt you instead, and that was wrong. I took a deep breath, fighting back tears. You didn't just hurt me, Eleanor, you took something from me. This gown, it was more than just fabric and thread. It was a piece of me, and you let someone else claim it. She didn't argue. Instead, she reached into her purse and pulled out a small envelope, handing it to me. I can't undo what's been done, she said quietly, but I want to make it right. Inside this envelope is a check for you. Full payment for the gown, no matter what happens. And I want to offer you something else. I opened the envelope, my hands trembling. Inside there was a large check with more zeros than I had ever seen in my life. It was more than I had ever charged for a wedding dress, more than I had ever dreamed of earning. But the money didn't feel like the solution to my pain. You've been treated unfairly, she continued, her voice gaining strength. And I can't fix the past, but I can help you build your future. I want to help fund your next collection. I believe in your talent, and I want you to succeed. I'll help you get your name out there. I couldn't speak at first. My mind was racing, trying to process everything. Was this her way of apologizing? Or was it just another attempt to make herself feel better? I didn't know. But I realized something in that moment. I didn't have to accept anything from her. I didn't need her approval or her money to prove my worth. I don't know what to say, I replied, feeling a wave of emotions crash over me. But I think I need time. Time to figure out what I want for myself. Eleanor nodded, her face sad but understanding. I get it. Take all the time you need. Just know that if you ever decide to take me up on my offer, I'll be here. I watched her walk out of my studio, feeling a strange mix of relief and confusion. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I was no longer a pawn in anyone else's game. I would decide my path on my terms. The next few months were a whirlwind. I didn't accept Eleanor's offer, not yet at least, but I used the time to build my own brand. Slowly but surely, my work began to speak for itself. Word of mouth spread, and I found myself working with brides who genuinely appreciated my talent. They didn't care about status or prestige. They cared about the craftsmanship and the love I poured into each design. And then one day, I received an unexpected email. The subject line read, "A wedding gown that will change everything." It was from Eleanor. She had just gotten married. The gown, the one Anna had designed, had been a disaster. The fabric had torn, the embellishments had come loose. It was a disaster from start to finish. She had tried to make it work, but it was nothing like she had imagined. "I've made a mistake," the email said. "The gown I wore wasn't the one I wanted. It wasn't the one you created. I was too proud, too caught up in everything. I'm sorry." In that moment, I realized something. It wasn't about the gown. It was never just about the dress. It was about learning to trust myself, my talent, and my worth. And though the story with Eleanor had been painful, it had ultimately led me to a place where I knew who I was and what I was capable of. I was ready to show the world. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this story and the unexpected twists and turns it brought. If you want to see more amazing tales like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video to show your support, and comment below with your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think. Don't forget to share this story with your friends so they can experience it too. Your support means the world, and I can't wait to bring you more exciting content soon.